Elizabeth April is a cosmic intuitive channeler who has the ability to go into other realms and dimensions in order to gain access to information. Elizabeth specializes in channeling past lives both on and off this planet. As a cosmic channeler, public speaker, spiritual influencer, and celebrated artist, she has made it her mission to help others in awakening themselves to infinite possibilities. Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the Soul Collective podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Very excited to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah, I want to talk to you all about cosmic identity, space and time, different dimensions, and soul awakening. So lots of different juicy topics. But the first thing that I want to ask you about is really your own personal journey of really coming into remembrance of all of these gifts at such an early age.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was born with extrasensory abilities, which basically means that I was born with, psychic, intuitive, very clairvoyant. I think one of my main abilities is being able to open up my third eye and see things in other dimensions and realms, but also see things like ghosts and spirits and chakras and auras and things like that as well. So I was really tapped into that at a young age. And that kind of left me very vulnerable and very open, just being different and weird and, trying to teach my friends how to meditate and levitate and those kind of things at such a young age, and tapping into their deceased grandparents and things like that as well. So it was kind of difficult for me to fit in. At a certain point in time, I consciously chose to shut down a lot of my gifts and abilities just to fit in, just to be normal, just to have friends. And I really went from the metaphysical world into the physical. So I started to play sports and, make friends that way and gain acceptance that way as well. So, going from one extreme polarity to the other. But in really suppressing my own spiritual connections, I lost a piece of myself, a big piece of myself. And that really spiraled me into depression and anxiety and panic attacks and just these feelings of overwhelm and taking on everyone else's energy. And that was just a really rough period in time for me. And then between 14, 15, 16 is when I was really just in that, the depression, the anxiety. And then at 16, it was my dad who actually recommended past life regression. At this point, I went to counselors and psychologists and talked to doctors and even high school teachers about the meaning of life, about this thing that I was missing, this thing that I was trying to grab onto. And it was through that past life regression where I started to visually see and consciously remember, who I've been before. And I went into lifetimes where I was philosophers and healers and channelers and monks. And in all of these lifetimes, I had this mission of giving humanity information, right? It's just like information giving in order to help people wake up and question and raise their consciousness vibration. And at 16, I knew that that was once again my mission in this lifetime. And ever since then, I've kind of been on this track, started with past life regression myself, and then got into channeling my own past lifetimes and seeing where I've been without the guidance of anyone else. And then at 18, having an alien abduction experience during a 10-day meditation retreat, and then opening me up, obviously, to a whole new world of what else is possible. And then really since then, having one-on-one clients and channeling whatever it is that they need to know. Maybe it's a health thing, maybe it's a cosmic connection, maybe it's a relationship issue. But really, I love focusing on anything that has to do with raising the frequency and the vibration and becoming empowered and understanding that you are your own creator.
Mm. It sounds like that past life regression experience was such a catalyst for you of remembering. And so I know that you help people with past life regressions. How important do you think that was? And what other parts of sort of like this reintegration of soul fragments process was really critical for you?
Yeah, it was definitely those two moments. It was the initial past life regression, and then of course the subsequent all of the past life, that I've explored and traveled and regressed myself into as well. And then also the cosmic understanding that aliens do exist was another huge integration of the soul fragments as well. But in that case, it was from other dimensions, right? Not just from this earthly plane. So that's huge. I mean, I really truly believe that we all need that, at one level or another. So past lifetimes and understanding that reincarnation is a thing is huge in your own awakening and exploration, understanding of self as many different things, not just this momentary being.
Yeah, I'm so curious there. Was there a part of you that resisted that at that age and time? And, with your family, like how was that in terms of acceptance?
When I was a kid, when I was really in, my own spiritual kind of world, my parents were very open and accepting, even though I was raised Catholic. And even though my dad was the main Catholic one, and he was also an engineer, he's the one who took me through the past life regression. And as a kid, he would do Reiki, even though he wouldn't call it Reiki, and energy work on us as babies. And he would always ask me questions like, oh, who are you talking to today? Or, what are the messages from God, is what I would say. And my mom, I think, was a little bit more freaked out because I would see ghosts and spirits in the house. And I was freaked out, and then she was freaked out. And we were just trying not to freak out each other. So it was a very interesting dynamic. But she understands it all now. And since then, she's had many of her own experiences. So overall, very huge acceptance within my family.
Hmm. Do you feel like that's really important in the process?
Absolutely. A lot of people are struggling right now with their own family acceptance. And I understand why, because there are certain beings on this planet who are waking up faster than others. So we're kind of at this weird time where everyone's not really harmonized, which is totally fine because the awakened ones are going to be leading the rest of humanity into the awakening. So that's fine, but it's difficult. We're at this weird kind of place. So I definitely recommend, if you don't have a family to support you, finding support within a tribe, a community, a network. And it's really beautiful how people, even in my own videos, will kind of message in the live chat and say, hey, anyone from Maryland or anyone from Ontario or anyone from, England, and then they kind of narrow down the location. People have actually found each other just through, that kind of online platform and community space. So I really encourage community. I know everyone's kind of in quarantine, but even just a FaceTime community with people
Yeah.
who understand and you can communicate and express, that will really help support you on your path for the validation of I'm not crazy. And I remember, when waking up, and this was like between 16 and 18, and it makes me emotional even now, just thinking, option A, either I go about and I live my life as a normal human and I go to school and I get into debt and then I get married and settle down and have kids and have a 9 to 5 and that's it. That's my life. That's option A. Option A is I'm the crazy one, and the rest of the world is onto something, which is just this basic reality, right?
Yes.
And option B is I'm actually onto something and what I'm onto is real, right? And the rest of the world is crazy. And in my mind at like 16, I'm like, there's no way that I'm actually the one who's onto something and the rest, the 8 billion people are the crazy ones, right? So turns out I was actually onto something, which is awesome, and I don't have to live and conform to that life that society tells us that we need to conform to. And I'm so grateful every day for being able to have a job where I get to express my truth and be heard and allow other people to be seen and validated. And as I'm seen and validated in what I'm tuning into, I validate everyone and they validate me. And it's this beautiful kind of connection to oneness that we all get to experience in our own bubble of reality. And we don't really have to conform to the outside world anymore. We're changing the world from the inside.
That's so beautiful, and I totally agree. And I think like the way that I compare it to in the beginning is like tuning into different stations on the radio, and at first like you don't really know that those other stations exist, and that's that like scary period of maybe uncertainty, and finding that community, that soul tribe, I think is such an important part of the process. But you really led into a direction that I really wanted to ask you about, which is this experience that we're having right now on the planet, which is quite a bit of polarity, quite a bit of shifts and change that are happening, especially in this year of acceleration. How are you finding that? What are some of the key messages that you think are really important during this time?
Absolutely, yeah. So, I mean, 2020 is this huge year of polarity, huge year of division. And we really have to just kind of find this equilibrium, this center place, during this year. And and so that's really important. And so we've got this huge 3D, 5D shift happening. And, I won't go into too much of like exactly what each one is, but 5D is just a new way to perceive your reality, right? So it's a heightened vibrational frequency where, say, polarity or triggers or difference doesn't really matter as much. And you can always go back to this unifying vision of reality, right? That's really what 5D is, and sitting in that vibration. Your whole world doesn't change. You're still sitting in the same living room, and you've got the same dog and whatever it may be. And yes, things will subtly change in your physical reality as your vibration changes, but essentially it's a perception shift, that we're going through. Most of the world right now is so stuck in 3D, and I don't blame them, because we have so many triggering aspects of this 3D world right now that are actually pushing us to take a huge back step into fight or flight, right? That is our natural programming. That is our natural kind of primal drive, is those fight and flight mechanisms. And it's so easy for society, especially mass media, to push us into this primal drive of fight and flight so that we don't really manifest the unity future that we need to be manifesting right now. So things are kind of polarizing between 3D, 5D until we snap back into alignment. And the new standard for alignment vibrationally on this planet is a higher vibration overall, than what we've ever seen before. But we have to go through this weird, awkward, liminal period where we're both experiencing, all of us are experiencing that 3D and that 5D. So major physical symptoms, aches and pains, headaches, freak accidents are happening, a lot of emotional upheaval as well, flashbacks to childhood, flashbacks to dream states. It's just, there's a lot of converging and a lot of revisiting. And what I've really downloaded is that this is the year where we clear the ancestral trauma, where we clear the past life trauma, where we clear the childhood trauma, and we really get ourselves to this updated place. We have to update our vibration, because most of us, even myself included, have been living in the past, right? We can't really help that because we've never had the tools to clear that old energy. And I think a lot of people have issues clearing the old energy, especially ancestral and especially past life, because they can't put their finger on it. It's not tangible. It's not like, oh yeah, I act like this because this happened to me,
Yeah.
right? So it's very difficult for people to kind of grasp their minds around. And I feel so bad and so much compassion for all of the humans out there who are going through all of these symptoms, are not spiritual at all, have no idea what's happening, and they're just kind of lost, and I mean, like, it's tough when you know that it's an energy upgrade or it's an activation or it's a purging or release. It's tough even when you know what's going on, let alone, having this stuff happen and not know, the spiritual, energetic, vibrational side of it.
Yeah, that's so true. Gosh. And I think exhaustion is another symptom right now that I
Yes.
definitely feel. And I think it's up for a lot of people right now. And I also think that it is easier, like an easier time to clear, even though more stuff is coming up. Maybe we have
Yeah.
access to more tools and information to be able to, help us through that process and really support us in that. But I want to also talk about purging because I know this concept of purging the 3D, which you talk about, really encompasses a lot of self-limiting beliefs, a lot of the old
Yeah.
programs that really keep us confined. Can you share a little bit more about that process for us?
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many different tools as far as how to hold space for yourself when you're releasing old energy, but it's almost like you won't be able to solve the problem if you don't understand that there is a problem to begin with. So there's this kind of looking at yourself, observing yourself, and admitting that you aren't as aligned as you'd want to be, right? Without getting trapped in that frequency of I'm not good enough, or trapped into that dogma. But ultimately, once you understand, I have limiting beliefs, I can't see them all, right? So once you understand that you've got something that you want to change, you actually make a statement that you want to change that thing. We don't realize how strong the ripple effect of vibration comes from making these statements in the present moment, right? All right, universe, all right, higher self, all right, spirit guides, I am ready to see who I really am. Then all of a sudden you get triggered over and over and over again in a week, and you're like, man, I don't know why I'm getting so triggered. Oh, maybe it was that statement that I made a week ago saying, I'm ready to see who I am. Oh, wow, well, I don't want to be that person, right? And then you start to make the change. So whatever it is, if you want to release old blocks, if you want to see limiting beliefs, if you want to understand your past lifetimes, whether it be an article that you come across, a YouTube video that's recommended to you, a download message in your yoga practice or meditation, the information will come to you. And that's why in a lot of ways, I'm letting go of one-on-one clients, because I ultimately want to teach people how to do this work themselves without having to go to a teacher or a healer or a channeler. They can be all of that, within themselves. So, but we have to make these statements of what we want in order to align the future frequencies to that statement, right? And then we can start the purging and the releasing, and you probably won't know exactly in that moment what it is that you're purging, but you know that you're going through it, and really holding space. And the biggest thing, other than those statements, is the compassion. Hold compassion for yourself and understand that you're like, I don't know why I'm so tired today. I've done nothing but binge watch Netflix or whatever it may be. It's like you don't even know the layers that you're releasing in that moment. So really just holding space and being okay, just chilling, and not resisting that energy, or else you're just repeating that same exhaustion in the future.
Yes, yes, I think that's such a great point. I guess I'm asking this on an individual as well as a collective level, but do you believe that things need to sort of get worse in order to get better, in order to bring us back into harmony?
Absolutely. At a collective, well, and an individual level, we've all been living less than, we've all been living trapped within this matrix system, giving our power away to that 1% when we should all be thriving. We should all be abundant. It baffles my mind that we still have third world countries out there, and yet we have got people with billions of dollars, and I don't understand why we don't all have a standard state of living, right? A standard wellness. So things need to change, and the system, whether it be educational or economic or political or religious or mass media, it's all been rooted in this old traditional, once again, the 1%, right, has all the power and all the control and all the money. And we need to collapse the system. So if people think it's bad now with COVID and quarantine, just wait, because it is going to get worse, and we need to be prepared for that worse, because when shit hits the fan again, then we don't go and revert back into the fight or flight. I'm good. I've got food, I've got water, I've got a beautiful place, I've got my family safe, and that's it. We can get through it. We're meant to get through it all, but we have to collapse the system in order for a rebirth to happen.
Any messages that you want to share in particular around this time, like around the election time and around upcoming changes?
Yeah, the biggest thing I would say individually as well as collectively is holding the highest frequency. So say, for example, if you're like, I want a new job, right? Just something very kind of baseline. Okay, well, why do you want a new job? Maybe it's, well, I want to make more money. Okay, well, why do you want to make more money? Because I want freedom. Great, that's the highest frequency. I want a new job. Why do you want a new job? I want a new job because I want to be in a career that I love. I want a job that I feel like I'm, enlightening humanity every day. Okay, great. So the enlightenment of humanity is really the highest frequency of what you want. So don't get stuck in the polarity of asking for what you want. Just like the political system and the election right now, don't get stuck in asking for freaking Biden or Trump. Oh my God, really go to the highest frequency. Screw either one of those candidates. What do you want for humanity? What do you want for America? What do you want for the collective? I want freedom. I want free will. I want abundance. I want the ability to thrive. I want the freedom of speech. That's what I want, right? For humanity, and holding that frequency rather than getting stuck in the polarity is going to allow you to manifest unity consciousness for humanity as a collective. Same thing with yourself individually. Hold the highest frequency, because if all you're asking for is money and you don't even know why you're asking for money, you could be very well holding limiting beliefs within your concept of money. Right? Oh, well, my dad was always broke and my mom was always, yelling at him or whatever. And that's actually being held even within the word money, right? Or abundance. So get away from that altogether and ask yourself, well, once you're financially free and abundant, then what? Then where are you going? Okay, freedom. That's really what I want. And then you get to have freedom in all areas of your life, not just with finances or work, right? So holding the highest frequency is so important right now, and making sure that you escape the matrix by not feeding into the system, not feeding into polarity.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because sometimes, there are those sort of like hidden triggers that we might not even be fully consciously aware of, and just understanding that, those are anchors to keep us stuck in that programming, in the matrix. And I love that vision of holding the highest frequency for humanity. So, so powerful. So in that, I want to ask you about free will and conscious creation and soul contracts.
Okay, that's a lot. But yeah, so that's great. So free will and destiny, right? So destiny, fate, whatever you want to call it, right? Things that are kind of already written in stone for your life or for humanity. So this is a huge concept. I've really contemplated this over the past 10 years since I really stepped back into my psychic and channeling abilities, because I wanted to know, what are the tools that we're working with? And likewise, what are the limitations that we're working with as a human being, which I also believe that we're hybrid beings, right? Which is really powerful. So when it comes down to free will versus destiny, I believe that both are simultaneously existing from moment to moment. And free will is easy to understand. You have the free will always to do, say, or be whoever it is that you want to be, right? Make the choices, learn the lessons, carve your own path. Ultimately, as a universal truth, you always have free will. Every being in the universe, every animal, every plant has free will. Every consciousness has free will. That is our greatest gift. Now, contracts are a little bit probably more contestable. I don't really know what other people or even channelers say, because I don't do any external research. But my understanding of destiny and soul contracts is that we, as a soul, create a blueprint for our life, pretty loose blueprint, right? It's not like moment to moment, but usually like bigger things that happen to us from incarnation to incarnation. So before you incarnate into one individual body or form, you write these blueprints. all right, so as Elizabeth April, at 25, I'm going to break up with my boyfriend. And at 26, I'm going to come out as bi, whatever it may be, right? At like 28, something else is going to happen. Or, 22, you get into a car accident. But these are pivotal moments in your life that shift you, shape you, change you. And ultimately, people are like, oh, destiny's so great. But typically, destiny and fate is a lot of negative stuff, right? It's the challenges in our life. And someone would be asking, and I've gotten this question a lot from a more religious community, which is, why would God have so much suffering in the world, right? And likewise, why as us, as the creator of our own reality, as a God in our own right? As a connection to source, a fractal of source, why would we create all this suffering in our life? And the reason why is because we wouldn't really grow or move forward or change if there was no suffering, right? Challenge allows us to understand the complexities of this binary reality in order for us to move through this polarizing reality, rather than if you had everything, if you had all knowledge, all money, all opportunity, all best friends, all whatever it is that you wanted to have, life would be so boring. It would
Yeah.
get so boring, right? So yeah, so with your contracts and your destiny, we write these things because, well, based on the last 2,500 lifetimes, this is what you've learned, this is what you haven't learned, this is what you have yet to learn, this is what you have to revisit. There's going to be abuse in childhood because that's connected to 5 other past lifetimes, and you need to purge that out and deal with that in this lifetime. You're going to get the tools and all of that, right? So when I get the question of, can your free will override your predestined contracts? And once again, understanding that you're the only one who wrote these contracts. It wasn't God, it wasn't a spirit guide, it wasn't a guardian angel, it was you, right? So ultimately, I used to resist my contracts all the time, especially because I'm claircognizant, which means that before something big happens, I know it's going to happen. So I'm like, no, not today. I don't know. This doesn't feel right. I don't really want to get into a car accident today. So, and so like, I know how to move the pieces around. And I started realizing, first of all, life got really boring because I didn't have that challenge. And also because I was in control of everything too much, kind of like lucid dreaming, kind of makes your dream time boring a little bit. And so, yeah, so now I've really given this honor to my predestined contracts in this way that me, without an ego, without a human, right, without a mind, without any sort of limitations, I knew what was going to be best for me in this lifetime to move forward as quickly as possible. So I don't want to know the future nowadays. I want to let things play out. I want to go through my challenges. I want to go through my contracts. I want to learn my lessons. And when something happens the first time, and I ignore it. Then it happens the second time, then I'm like, maybe there's a pattern here. Then I ignore it again. Then it happens the third time, and I'm like, okay, what's the lesson I'm learning? And let's not do that again, right? So really being consciously aware of those contracts coming back. So ultimately, we can override contracts with our free will because free will kind of usurps contracts. It's even more powerful than those contracts, but you don't want to. I'm telling you right now, you do not. I've been there, I've done that. You don't want to do it. It really takes away from the whole point and purpose and existence of us being a human right here at this time.
So what are some things that you as Elizabeth April are still learning, or challenges that you're still growing through?
Great question. So definitely vulnerability. Like as a human being, vulnerability is huge, and I'm so used to knowing. Like I have this obsession with knowing everything, and I'm so used to kind of this perfectionism, right? If you know everything, then you want it the perfect way. And of course, I run my own business, and the perception of me as a teacher as well is important. And none of that matters. None of it matters, right? If I get caught up in the perception of other people and what they think of me, then I would be bogged down by every Christian who calls me the devil incarnate. You know what I mean? So I can't allow that stuff to affect me. And one thing that really helps is Buddhist teachings. And I don't really consider myself a Buddhist by any means, but I've had many Buddhist lifetimes. And I've got a lot of Sanskrit tattoos that I take from those teachings. And I always ask myself, what would Buddha do in this moment? And it's usually always non-reaction. It's usually
Mhm.
always being in your own neutral place. So that's definitely one lesson. And then another thing is, as a star seed, it's the balance between how much of a spiritual cosmic soul being am I going to be from moment to moment, and how much of a human am I going to be from moment to moment. And part of me, just for sake of ease, wants to separate those two aspects of myself, because that's the way that the world presents itself, is very separated. If you are spiritual, you are in a group, you are in a category, you are, easily observable in that way. If you're a human, you're just blending in with the rest of society. And and I'm trying to kind of find the way to bring these two sides together, not just for myself, but also to teach this to humanity as well, because that's the way that 5D is going, is this quantum state where everything is happening simultaneously and there is no separation. But the thing is, for many of us, it's so ingrained in us is that if we step into that spiritual aspect, if we really open up and be exactly who we are, as these spiritual souls, then we're going to get persecuted, and I think, and then all of a sudden you can get into a spiritual ego, and all of a sudden you're bypassing these deeper concepts because you're only relying on the teachings. And that's really what I've done before, is bypassing the human emotions by trying to teach my way out of it. Okay, well, what's my lesson here? And my wife is always like, no, what are you feeling? Screw the lesson, right? What are you feeling? Because I just want to rapidly move through it rather than fully, you know, experience it, right? So
Mm.
that, it just feels like I'm living in two worlds at the same time, and I'm trying to enmesh both of these worlds. But I don't want to say it's never been done before, because it has, but on this planet, it's very rare that in the past, I think the last time we were enmeshed with physical and spiritual was probably back in ancient Atlantis in Lemuria. And that's what
Wow.
all these star seeds and light workers are doing at this time. We are stepping into this quantum state where we can have it all. But we're still, I think all of us are still working through the separation, the harmony, bringing it back together, and where we are within that mix of both of these worlds.
Mm. With that, I really want to talk to you about frequency matching, because I feel like I'm a recovering frequency matcher, even though I recognize it as a gift. But this tendency to sort of like shift down in frequency, and as opposed to like really elevating and raising the vibration and holding that. Have you found that to be true, or something that people um, have a tendency to do, and and if so, how do we overcome that?
Absolutely, yeah. It's very common. A lot of empaths are these, I've never heard the term frequency matcher, but I love it. I love it. And we do that all the time. We do that in romantic relationships. We do that in family dynamics. And typically it's always lowering our vibration to match theirs. And the reason why is because that is the most common and the most acceptable vibration in the present moment, right? Is that lower vibration. So it's easier for us to move. The other thing too is we just tend to be more conscious as well. So if there's an awkward energy going on in the room because you're in a different place and you don't even know what to talk about, oh, well, I'm just going to bring myself down. Who are you voting for? What's the weather like today? And all of a sudden you know how to play the game. So for a very long time, I was teaching not to do that at all. But now I understand that it's a balance. So if you want to really become a master of this binary reality, then you want to be able to switch your vibration and go to those lower places. But there's a difference between going there because you feel obligated or guilty or shameful or judged or whatever, that fear, right? Going there because of fear versus going there because of compassion, right?
Mm.
And gratitude for the experience that we get to have as third dimensional beings. I love bringing out my human. And once again, I try not to, try not to kind of analyze what state I'm in all the time. But I love having a conversation with other humans because for me, I love observing where their mind is at. You know, what do they want to talk about? I'll let them lead the conversation every single time. Whereas in the past, I was like, hey, are you awakened? Hey, have you thought about this? Hey, what about that? You know, and it was pushy. Like I was just pushing people into that space, and there was a lot of resistance there. So it's okay to be around 3D. If you're not strong enough to consciously lower yourself while still maintaining a high vibration and gratitude in that moment, then separate yourself completely from 3D. There's going to need some time for you to understand the power that you have in a higher vibration before you start to work with lower vibrations and playing the game. Right? But that's what I call it. It's playing the game consciously. We can't just avoid 3D for the rest of our lives, or, you know, good luck getting a job, good luck having friends. You know, it's just kind of tough in this enmeshed 3D world to kind of exist while avoiding it, right? I mean, go off to the jungles of Borneo, right? I mean, like, good luck. So we're here to integrate, and we're here to find our power and our strength. And I want to also mention that eventually, when you can play the game and lower your vibration, like I said, in just a conscious and aware and full of gratitude and compassion way, and really enjoy that state of being. And then in that 3D relationship, you can also raise your vibration and sit in this higher vibrational frequency. And I don't want to say it'll be so uncomfortable for them that they'll eventually have to move up, but I also want to say that eventually there's going to be some sort of blow up situation. There always is. Every once in a while, very rarely, there's a very graceful, like all of a sudden they start understanding the truth and waking up and questioning. That's incredible, but also very rare. Typically there's a fight or some sort of blow up that will actually allow both parties to purge out their communication and their truth. And by doing that, there's nothing that's hidden anymore. There's no deeper or heavier energy that's sitting in that dynamic. So that allows the person to actually raise themselves up to your vibrational frequency. And instead of you matching them at a lower frequency, they match you at a higher frequency. This is especially important for family dynamics. And as far as friends, you know, because they're not as maybe stable in your life, they can come and go. And if they awaken or meet that vibration, they can come back into your life, and you can start a new dynamic and relationship with them. So there's many ways to play it. It's not just stand in your power and walk away if they don't stand in the same power. It's actually working with playing this 3D game and understanding how powerful you are in being able to dabble in different frequencies. That's becoming the master. It's not avoiding 3D and having it be all rainbows and butterflies and whatever, you know, but really accessing 3D as a tool, as a mechanism, as a strength that you have without getting sucked in or pulled into it in an emotional or reactionary way.
Thank you for that. So helpful. Anything else that you would sort of characterize the difference between 3D and 5D relationships?
Okay, yeah. So, okay, 3D relationships, really like 5D would be considered just being awakened or waking up at least. And being awakened is just being aware of yourself. And having the awareness of self in all of the capacity of yourself, right, also requires responsibility. You have to be responsible for who you are. So in the 3D, that's all 5D stuff. It's just being aware of kind of how it all functions and being willing to change and not being stuck and those kind of things. Being 3D is being kind of very aloof or ignorant or naive to who you are, the actions that you're doing, the thoughts that you're projecting, and the perceptions that you have in your own mind. And the problem with 3D relationships, whether it be a parent-child relationship or a romantic relationship or a friendship or a work, you know, coworker relationship, tends to be a lot of projection of your own limiting beliefs, your own reality, your own traumas, right, onto other people in your reality. So it's just a lot of projection because you're not aware of who you are. You're not aware of your traumatized or hurt self. You're not aware of your inner child. So you're just projecting this state of fear and limitation and judgment and shame and guilt on everyone else. And if you get someone else who's in the same place of 3D and they're projecting all of their stuff, I mean, it's a lot of chaos that's happening and nothing is rooted in reality. None of that stuff that they're projecting is actually currently existing in this present moment, right? It's like the definition of drama, really, because it's coming from the past and they're not even aware of where it's coming from or how it's coming from that place. So that's kind of more of a 3D relationship, is just the blame game and the judgment and the guilt and the projection and the attachment and the limiting beliefs, you know. And then 5D is much more relaxed, much more fun, much more updated. And the second that that relationship gets imbalanced or skewed, or there is some sort of projection, the other person should be consciously aware enough and balanced and grounded enough to understand, oh, this isn't about me. This has nothing to do with me. So how can I help you? You're calling me a
Mm.
liar or a cheater or whatever it may be, the projection is, right? But this isn't about me. That's not who I am. Instead of reacting in that moment, you hold space for that person. How can I best assist you? How can I help you? You're clearly hurting right now. You can't tell me you're hurting, but you're hurting. So come here, let me give you a hug, right? So it's that kind of level above the polarity, level above the projection, where you can always hold space for compassion. Now, it doesn't always happen that way, because right now, even some of the greatest teachers out there are still dealing with the 3D and the triggers and the trauma. But the best teachers out there, I believe, are always the ones who are able to be the student as well as the teacher.
Yeah, so, so beautiful to really, acknowledge the differences and also just notice them in ourselves, right? Because I think relationships can be such our best teachers, in this human experience, and really
Yeah.
to understand what's coming up, what's arising. So I want to talk with you about media because I think it's so fascinating that you really don't read a lot or listen to what other teachers are saying, and have really accessed this enormous amount of information that you're bringing forward in teaching, and just who you connect with, and what recommendations you have for accessing really outside of mainstream media.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. Um, it's so funny. So my wife, she does like a lot of what is it, influencer marketing, and she's kind of in that like marketing advertising world. And she'll always tell me about different competitors and different people who are, and competitor is so the wrong word, but this is how she
In
kind of
this
explains
space,
it,
and yeah.
in the same spiritual space. And it's overwhelming. She's telling me about all these different people and what they're doing and what they're, and I'm like, how does the normal average individual who's awakening find the information that they're looking for, right? In the mass sea of knowledge that's out there, right? From different teachers and what have you. And it really does come down to discernment and understanding of resonance, right? And what resonates with you. So I'm glad that I don't do any external research. I was told at a very young age not to, so that I can keep my channelings as clear as possible, which I'm so grateful for, because it's already enough tapping into those frequencies and navigating the information, let alone trying to navigate through other people's perceptions, right?
Mm.
And yeah, so it's very interesting. So ultimately, for me as a channeler, I get my information from many different sources. Especially this past year, I've been really known for channeling the Galactic Federation of Light, even though that's not my only source of information that I channel. So I channel interdimensional beings. Doesn't just have to be the Galactic Federation, could be other beings as well. I channel past life versions of myself as well, for information. That's a lot of the information is kind of hidden within those past lifetimes. That's great. Just kind of bringing through the fractals of myself on this planet as well as off this planet. Of course, I channel, through spirit guides as well, especially if it's in a person's information. They hold a lot of the keys and the information for you. Channel my higher self as well, kind of that pure source, kind of like channeling your soul, pure information across all space and time. And then probably one of my favorite places to channel information is just source consciousness itself, and it just holds, just like the consciousness grid around planet Earth holds all of our information stored through all space and time on this planet, source holds all of that information held within space and time, within the entire universe. So it's a very vast amount of information. So that's kind of the different sources that I channel for information. And it really depends on what I'm looking for and who I need to go to in that moment. And then for people, what I recommend, like once again, At a certain point in time, it's important to look within. You know, I think at all the time it's important to look within,
Yeah.
but there's going to be a certain point in time where you're going to want to cut yourself off from teachers and remove yourself a little bit. And it's within allotting yourself that space, not just receiving from others or outside sources, but sitting in that space for long enough to start receiving from your own sources, right? So, and like I said, you can start channeling information from any of those places that I mentioned, and probably more than that, you know. But one thing that you need to do is just quiet your mind, right? And listen. And also heighten your vibration as well is really important. So if you think about connecting to a Palladian star family of yours out there in the universe, they're potentially in the 8th dimension frequency. We're over here in the 3rd dimension frequency. Just like you mentioned at the beginning, it's kind of like a radio station. They're just on a different radio station. You don't have to get to the 8th dimension to communicate with them, but at least meet them halfway, right? So raising your vibration is going to join you to the frequency of that vibration that you're currently in. That's why I really don't recommend trying to open your third eye or start to channel if you're in a really low, desperate place, because you're only going to be attracting the beings or vibrations that are matching your vibration in that moment, which could be a low vibrational frequency. So you want to make sure that you're in a very content place in life. And you also want to make sure that your body is taken care of. I always find it funny when I'm in the middle of a session and all of a sudden my body's like, I'm really hungry right now. I could really use like a freaking French fries or something, you know, or an apple or something like that. And so when you take care of your body, whether it be sleep or food or hydration, or even just exercise or stretching, you know, you allow your consciousness to go to those other places rather than your body constantly being in your ear saying, I need this, right? And there's that fight or flight mechanism. So it's really overriding that fight or flight mechanism as well. And then one more thing about channeling, I mean, we could talk about this all day, but one more thing is discernment is so important, right? A lot of people, I don't want to say a lot of people get led astray, but the problem is that a lot of people start opening up their consciousness and they tune into these other frequencies and they bring in these energies, but they don't realize that they're actually bringing in still old limiting beliefs and 3D habit patterns into this new amazing space. And one good example of this would be, you know, all of a sudden you get connected to a Lyran version of yourself from the 6th dimension in a past lifetime. And all of a sudden you're like, that's it. I'm a Lyran being. That's who I am. It's like, no, you're actually a human being who has the ability to tap into many other beings, right? So if you're looking for a label and you're looking for an attachment and you're looking for a category, you're still in 3D, right?
Yeah.
You're still in that limiting belief place, and you're bringing that vibration into the universe, and it's not going to mesh well, but everyone has to go through their own lessons. So that discernment, being able to tell the difference between a high vibration and a low vibration, is so important. And we can do that through understanding what low vibration is, and likewise understanding what high vibration is, right? You don't know what light looks like if you haven't seen darkness. You don't know what darkness looks like if you haven't seen light.
Mm. Any other tips that you have for raising our vibration?
Yeah. So one big thing, you know, and I lecture about this all the time, how to raise your vibration, is being consciously aware of all of the choices that you make throughout your day. So the problem is that in 3D, we've limited ourselves to, well, this is who I am. And we just kind of assume that that's who you're going to be for the rest of your life. Well, I am a mother or a wife or a father or a businessman or whatever those labels are, right? And, you know, maybe like the easiest example I could say is like you wake up in the morning and you go to drink a coffee and you're not even aware of making the coffee in the morning because it's just what you do every morning. I implore all of you to stop in that moment and ask yourself, is this what I want? Or maybe do I want turmeric? Or maybe do I want tea? Or maybe do I want a smoothie? Maybe do I want something different other than coffee every day, right? So I believe that in that moment where you choose tea, you identify as a tea drinker, but maybe an hour later you drink coffee and you identify in that moment as a coffee drinker. We need to be changing up the labels that we hold and the attachments and expectation that we hold to those labels, and then subsequently being consciously aware of every choice we make throughout the day and understanding that we're making hundreds, if not thousands of choices in our quarantine lifestyle, which is mind-blowing, but even like wearing sweatpants. Do I really want to wear sweatpants today? Does this really excite me? And if it does excite me, then what ones do I want to? I have 5 sweatpants. Which ones do I want to wear today? So just bringing that 2 seconds of conscious awareness will actually break the patterns of autopilot programming.
Mm. Beautiful. I want to go back to the Galactic Federation of Light and just want to tap in and see if there's any messages that they would like to share for humanity right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I channel them every month, lots of messages coming through, but let's just see if I can maybe tune in this moment and see if there's anything above all of the information that they've given me in the past little bit that people need to know right now. So one second. Yeah. Okay, very interesting. So they're bringing up this concept of choosing a path. A lot of us right now at this time are really in between 2 major choices. And you can kind of, if you're listening to this, you can think about what choices you're in the middle of. Some people are like, should I buy the car? Should I not buy the car? Should I change my job? Should I not? Should I leave my wife or my husband? Should I not? These are some pretty profound, very human choices that we're kind of all being faced with right now. And what they said was, at first they said, it's time to make a choice. And there's a huge portal that's opening up in December 21st, 2020. So it's important because that portal will amplify whatever thoughts or frequencies you're in for the new year. So if you're in a confusion frequency, that's a chaos frequency, that's a fear frequency. You don't know what you want, you don't know what's happening, you don't know what's going to go down for the future. So in a way, you're going to be projecting that confusion and that chaos into the future if you hold that by, December 21st. So what they said, which was really interesting, they said, it's actually not about a choice. And going back to it's actually about holding the highest frequency. So if you're like, I don't know if I should change my job and get a new job or not. So instead of thinking, weighing all the pros and cons, is this better? Is this better? You can ask yourself, what's the highest frequency? What do I really want? Once again, we can easily bring it back to freedom, right? I want freedom within my position. I want freedom within my job. That's it. You don't have to make a choice of one or the other, because as a matter of fact, you don't see all of the different parallel realities and timelines that are playing out. So if you hold the highest frequency of I want freedom, maybe the second that you step into 2021, you get a promotion. There's your freedom right there. You've got a bigger voice, you're getting paid more, right? You didn't have to make a choice. You just had to know what you wanted within that dynamic. Okay. And then same thing, with the other side as well. Maybe you get a brand new job and you have that freedom within that. But if you don't know what you want and you're still in chaos because you're only looking at 2 options, then you're limiting yourself. So that's the biggest thing right now. We all need to figure out what we want for this next year in all of the ways, personal, professional, spiritual.
That's so powerful. Gosh, I could talk to you for hours. This has been such an amazing conversation. But before we wrap up, I just want listeners to know where they can go to connect with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So just Elizabeth April, pretty much everywhere, elizabethapril.com, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. tons of free binge-worthy content on YouTube, so I always love directing people there. If you want to dive deeper, I do have a YouTube membership program. If you want to get direct channeled messages from the Galactic Federation and meet different interdimensional beings, I also do a Galactic Federation channeling every single month, and that's just $11 for a ticket, so it's super accessible. And then the last thing that I've really been working on is an online course platform. So I have this course. It took me about a year to develop, and obviously like 10 years of channeling to understand what humans need right now. And this is the perfect time. It's a 3D to 5D shift masterclass. So over 8 weeks, it's literally meant to take you from the third dimension frequency, the reaction, the emotion, the trauma, the chords, into this liberated 5D place. And once you're there, you can create any life that you want to create. You know, you have that ultimate free will and freedom in that place. So yeah, if you're really stuck right now and you're human and you want to get out of that, I've got a course for you. So you can check that out with zero obligation. And that's
Wow.
just on my website as well. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, what a great resource. We'll make sure to get listeners over to those. And I absolutely love your YouTube channel as well. Elizabeth, you're such a great teacher. I just want to honor you for, your heart and your spirit and all the beautiful wisdom that you're bringing forward and helping people understand it in such a relatable way. So just thank you so much for your time today. I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me on.